Welcome back to the show today with me, Johnny Pardo. So today I welcome Amber to the show, and we're going to be talking about working through binge eating, overeating, and different eating habits, and talking a little bit about becoming a confident eater with Amber today. So just a quick introduction to Amber before we dive in. So Amber helps women stop binge eating and overeating by rewiring their brains so that they can feel normal and in control around any food. Through coaching and psychology, she learned that there was nothing wrong with her and she just needed some simple brain tools to start making dramatic shifts in her eating habits and life. She now walks others step by step through her process in her signature Confident Eater program, as well as her podcast in the top 3% worldwide called Become a Confident Eater. So welcome to the show today, Amber. Glad to have you on here. First of all, it'd be great to hear a little bit about your story, as much as you feel called to share, that's got you so fired up, it seems like, about helping women in particular with their eating habits.
Yeah, thanks for having me on today, Johnny. So, a little bit about how I got into this work and where this all started was I had started, as a lot of women and men often do, with this desire to lose weight, to get healthier. And I Googled how to do that. And the first thing that came up was calorie counting. And so I downloaded my Fitness Pal, I put in how much I wanted to weigh, and I began my calorie counting journey. And at first, it worked pretty well. I started losing weight. I was feeling good. But slowly over time, I started to get more and more obsessed with this wanting to lose more and more weight. I thought, okay, maybe I can cut back my calories a little bit more. Maybe I can try even harder. I can get even leaner. I can get even thinner. And then over time, I got down to where I was eating about 1,000 calories a day, which is not near enough for a grown adult woman. That's actually how much a 2-year-old toddler needs. And so many women I see are getting prescribed 12,000 calories or 1,200 calories a day, not 12,000. But that is not enough for anyone most of the time if we are active. And so what happens then is our brain starts to send out these urges and these strong cravings for food. This is a very well-researched phenomenon where our brains are trying to protect us. A lot of times we forget that our brains are wired for survival from thousands and thousands of years ago. They're not used to having grocery stores and food available on every corner and in all of our cabinets. And so what happened was, as I was restricting more and more, I started to get these stronger and stronger cravings until one day I caved. And I remember my first binge, it was on 7 cookies. It was around Christmas time. And I thought, okay, I'm just gonna have one. I've been good for so long. And then I had another, and I had another, and I had another. And I just slowly spiraled. And then after that first binge, I thought, okay, now I got to get back on track. I'll do even better tomorrow. But it didn't stop. So then I had another binge and then another. And then I would say, okay, I'm going to be better. I'm going to be better. Until I realized that it wasn't getting better on its own. And I continued to binge. I was starting to binge daily. And so the first place I went to is therapy. I knew I wanted to take an approach from this mindset and a psychological approach. And I started going to therapy for binge eating. And it gave me some tools, but it didn't really complete the whole picture for me. And a lot of times therapy focuses a lot on your past, which can be very useful for understanding why you might be the way you are, but it doesn't often give you actionable tools to move you forward in the future. And that's what I found, is that I didn't feel like I got the tools I needed to stop binge eating. And so after that, that led me to doing a full deep dive into the internet, into all the things of binge eating. And I came across this book called Brain Over Binge. And Brain Over Binge is by Catherine Hansen. I highly recommend it to all my clients. But this was the first time I had read anything that talked about binge eating just being a habit. So often it's become a disorder, and it is technically a recognized eating disorder, but it makes us feel like there's something wrong with us, and it's something we're gonna have to manage for forever. But for the first time, I started to look at it as just a habit, and that really simplified my recovery journey for me. And that was ultimately what helped me start to recognize that just because I had these thoughts about food didn't mean they were true. And, there was a lot of other pieces to the puzzle as well, but I would say that moment of starting to learn about the psychology of my brain and how these urges were formed and worked were what really helped me to stop binge eating in the long run.
Wow. No, thank you for sharing your journey and what you went through. And yeah, I can relate to the therapy thing as well. Like not necessarily to the eating habits, but like the general thing as well. Like that, I find it useful. I have a therapist, and actually got it 2 days. But like that's really useful to kind of reflect on stuff. But yeah, like little tools for sort of like moving forward are also for me essential as well. And it's really cool how you've pulled together some tools for helping people with their brains to sort of like move forward to work
Mhm.
through this. It seems like so loving that. So yeah, I mean, did he are these tools like complicated? Are they quite like simple, straightforward? Yeah, have you like are they kind of like a mixture for you? Yeah, just like to hear a little bit
Yeah.
about that. Not that you can go for every single tool, of course.
So the biggest thing that really helped me was learning about this mindset piece and how our thoughts cause our feelings and our feelings drive our actions. This is
Mm,
based in cognitive behavioral therapy, so it is a form of therapy. But for me, I had to apply it specifically to these thoughts around food and showing my brain that I didn't actually need a lot of food. That even though it told me you need food, extra food more than I already needed. Like again, make sure we're being
mm,
clear here that this is not just eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner. This is eating thousands of calories past that.
mm,
But I had to show my brain how those thoughts were actually not true and that I didn't need that
mm,
food. And a lot of times our brains can feel really unsafe around that of letting go of eating habits because food is like our number one need to survive. And so it's very cautious around letting go of habits around food in particular because it wants to make sure that we're getting enough and that starvation is not the number one threat as it's been for most of our human history. Um, so a lot of it was recognizing that these urges that I were feeling were not anything that was deep and meaningful. It didn't mean that, oh my gosh, something like must have traumatic happened today that is the reason why I want to binge. It really just simplified it. And so it was more of a mindset shift around that versus an actual tool. But in a lot of other areas, there were some other tools that really helped me calm my nervous system and start to sit with these urges and desires for food. And that can often give us access back to what I call our higher brain, which is this part of our brain that makes decisions. It's the part of us that knows we don't want to binge. It's the part of us that knows we want to eat healthy, that we want to live a long, happy life. But if we were in a very stressed state, and a lot of times these urges to binge can feel a lot like anxiety, our
mm,
higher logical brain will shut down because it's in fight or flight mode. So,
sure.
my favorite one is just a very, very simple breathing technique, which is a long inhale in through our nose and then a long, slow exhale, twice as long through our nose. And this makes it so, like, anxiety really cannot keep itself together in your body because you're showing your brain then, hey, I'm not being chased by a bear. Like, I'm in a safe environment. I'm able to go into rest and digest mode right now because I'm taking these long, slow, deep breaths.
Yeah, I love that you touched on like breathing. I'm a breathwork practitioner as well. And I did that because like the breath was like one of the most essential tools for me that's like helped. Um, because yeah, like I can relate to that, like not getting access to maybe the logic or the decision as much when it's like, and
Hmm.
unfortunately, I feel like in this day and age, there's quite a lot of things that can put us into survival mode, even though it's not, it's not like that bear or lion chasing us down the street, which obviously the survival mechanism would be useful for, or someone even with a
Hmm.
dangerous weapon or a dangerous person. But yeah, yeah, I love how you said that the brain thinking about like food, it's like going, oh, it's like life or death, it's life or death. But it sounds like what you're
Hmm.
doing is then getting it into a calmer state so you can think a bit more like rationally. So I really love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just think about how people tend to eat their food nowadays, too. Like, even just outside of binge eating, just normal eating habits, we're scrolling our phone, right? We're scrolling our phone, we're
Mm,
watching TV, we're working at our desk, we're getting emails. And those emails, like even though we know, we're not going to die because our boss got angry at us, that's going to activate our stress system basically and make us feel like, oh my gosh, we're going to die right now. And so that, and then we're eating and then we're stress eating and then we're scrolling our phone and oh my gosh, all the politics and all of this stuff. And oh, look, a funny cat video. And so like we're going through this ginormous emotional roller coaster when most people are eating distracted too. So that's another thing we want to consider is like you are essentially artificially putting yourself in this stress state. So before we want to start eating, we want to make sure we're calm, but that's also so you can do the breathing technique then. But then, of course, just throughout our day-to-day life, and specifically when you get these strong cravings, these strong desire for food. Like I used to feel like I was a ghost out of my body and I was just in the cabinets eating. I wasn't even present. That's when we particularly want to start these breathing techniques or some other things to calm down our nervous system so we can start to wake up again and see what's actually going on.
I love that. I don't know about you as well, but like I've been in those states like with like I talk a lot about mental health and then like work through quite a lot of stuff in it. But like when there could be a state that where it's just like the body's just a bit overwhelmed, it's just like I'm so like anxious, I might be angry, it could be a mixture of emotions and things like that. What I found I sometimes have had to do is just get outside. And it's just like gotta get outside, gotta get fresh air, gotta move or something, or might even be press ups. I got very good at press ups, which is a good thing from those things. But yeah, sometimes just moving that body to kind of calm it down a little bit I found useful as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's awesome. So yeah, Amber, tell me a little bit about what is, you got the term the confident eater program. Tell me like what that means and yeah, a little bit about that.
So when I thought about the type of eater I wanted to be, like if I wasn't going to be a binge eater, what type of eater did I want to be? And
Mm,
I was also someone who I would overthink all my eating decisions. I was so insecure about how I was eating. I was secret eating all the time. And so the complete opposite of that is being someone who's confident around their eating habits. And of course, that connects too to being confident in your body. So it's confidence all around. So that's really where I came up the name the confident eater is because I want people to feel like when they sat down for a meal, they felt confident either saying yes to the piece of cake or saying no to the piece of cake, whatever felt right to them that day.
mm,
Because I spent so long, I mentioned the calorie counting, but there's so much else that was in there too, from intermittent fasting to vegan, and I'm still a little bit vegan, but like I had so many strict food rules that I had to follow, or I thought I had to follow in order to be healthy, in order to maintain my weight, that food just became so confusing for me. And that I was just like so nervous every time I sat down that I was going to do something wrong because I'd heard a million different approaches of how I was supposed to eat. And bananas are good and no, bananas are bad. They have too much sugar. And, so it just became so conflicting that I felt so unconfident eating. And so that's where I really wanted to focus is how can I be someone who no matter where I go in the world, I love to travel. No matter what restaurant I go to, no matter who I eat out with, that I can feel confident that I can make decisions that feel right to my body.
mm. I like that. Yeah, I've actually got a banana next to me when you said that. So yeah, no, yeah, because sometimes when you think, I mean, I've been the extreme when you're like, you've got to eat everything like healthy, but that can get like a little bit exhausting. So
Mhm.
yeah, it sounds like the confident eater is not necessarily about, correct me if I'm wrong, not necessarily about like, you got to be like restricted, it's got to be healthy and no like bad stuff, but it's like, just, you just feel confident in making your decisions and you feel like you're in control of your decisions.
Yeah, I definitely teach moderation for how we should eat. And I know we all hear, oh, just eat in moderation or eat 80% healthy, 20% not so healthy. No one actually really knows what that means or how to do it. So that's definitely some skills and tools that I teach. But, learning to do things in moderation, it's often the harder way. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's going to be fun and easy to learn the moderation way, because it's easier to just say, you know what, no more chocolate. We're not going to have chocolate ever again. We're not just going to cut out sugar. And sometimes that feels easier because we just say, here's this one decision. And if I'm overeating and binge eating chocolate, let's just cut it out. Sometimes that can be helpful in like the initial stages to kind of regain some confidence around food. But oftentimes people want to be able to have chocolate in their life again. They want to be able to go to a birthday party and have the cake. They don't want to cut out sugar or carbs forever. And so moderation is something that is harder to learn, I will say, but
Mm,
it's something that's much easier. And we can use it, sorry, not much easier, but it's much more sustainable. And using the example of something like social media too, I think a lot of people can understand, it would be easier to just delete all social media off of our phone. But then we might miss out on sometimes we do want to see our friends' updates or, like me and you, we have businesses on social media. And so maybe we have to be on social media in order to grow the business that we want. And so, yes, it's a little more difficult to learn how to moderate it, but it has so many more opportunities for joy and for growth in our life that we might want to choose to learn how to do that.
That's a good point. Yeah, social media, I've certain windows now that I use it. So it's like, because I've got to use it like to a certain degree and it's good for connection. But, I don't want my social life, I like to be with people, so in
Hmm.
person. But it's
Hmm.
also good to connect all over the world, and then if you're going somewhere, meet up
Hmm.
with someone. So yeah, like not cutting it out completely. So I like your
Hmm.
definition on um, moderation. I'm just thinking, Amber, for the like because you were talking about like moderation and what like the advice is out there. I know there's so many different things you could hear in like the health industry and experts. One person says this, one person says
Hmm.
that. For the individual who's maybe like, oh, I want to work on my eating habits, and then but I'm finding it a little bit tough, but they're finding it like overwhelming from all the stuff they're
Hmm.
finding. What guidance could you offer that person?
Yeah. So, first, I want to offer that if you're in that position, I used to think this too, where I was like, there's no way I can moderate this food. Like, absolutely not. My binge food was always Nutella because it was something that, like, my number one, I would say. We always had it in the house, and it was like so easy, to just like take out a spoon, or for being honest, like my finger, and just like eat it. And there was like no limits, there was no boundaries. I could just go, 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 go. And I would think like, oh my gosh, there's no way I could ever eat Nutella. Sugar is addicting. Like, I'm just gonna have to cut it out. Just no more buying it. But the truth is, how we know that moderation is possible is that there are plenty of people all around the world who do eat these foods in moderation. I have two younger brothers, and they're the type of people who will like leave three chips in the bag, and it will drive me crazy because I'm like, there's three chips left. Like, either throw it away or eat them, and it's like, what are we doing here? But that is showing us that these skills are innate to us a lot of times, and it is possible. And now I'm not here to say that or debate that processed foods do not have some addictive qualities or that they're not easier to overeat on than broccoli. Like, that is true, but that doesn't mean it's going to be impossible to have the health we want, that to have the lifestyle we want, while not also including them in. We can include these in because there are people who are lean and healthy and like sometimes they call them like the skinny fat people that are like really skinny, but you see them like going to McDonald's and eating pizza for breakfast, and you're like, how are they this way? And because they have learned to tune into their body and eat in amounts that feel good to them, which is what we want to focus on, is knowing, okay, yes, it might still taste good, but how is it feeling in our body? And our body actually sends us a lot more feedback than we might imagine. And we need to pay attention to that feedback. So, one example that I think is really good with this is like gummy candy. For me, when I'm eating gummy candy, I can almost immediately feel the effects on my blood sugar. I also hate the way it feels on my teeth. It gets all sticky and it makes my teeth like grainy. And once I noticed that, my desire for gummy things decreased because I noticed how my body started to respond to those things, and it made it more unpleasurable. But most of us are just not that tuned into our body. We're just going throughout our day, so we don't even take the time to notice. We just think, oh, it tastes good. We eat it, and then we just ignore the rest of the effects that we might be feeling and go throughout our day.
That makes sense with tuning into the body, and I like your example, the gummy. How come people like tune more into their body, do you think, or begin to? Because I know we're such a busy, well, I know in the UK and in the US with my friends over there, like we're such like busy, we're going for our like day-to-day lives. Is there anything
Mhm.
else you found useful, seen from other people to really connect with our bodies more, to listen to it?
Mhm. Yeah, I think the easiest way is to just set a timer for like every 30 minutes or every hour and just check in. And what that can look like, it can be if you're working on with food, like checking into your hunger and fullness, being like, am I hungry, or do I got enough food in me that I feel like I don't need food for another 4 hours? Am I starting to get hungry? And then you can also check in with how you're emotionally feeling. So, am I feeling just neutral right now? I'm just kind of going throughout my day. Did something happen that I'm feeling certain kind of angry about or a little anxious about? Am I feeling really happy because I just saw my best friend or whatever it is? most of us don't really have that emotional awareness either a lot of the times. And that comes from tuning into our body. So tuning into our body is more than just listening to our hunger and fullness. It's also being able to identify emotions really easily because those are just energy in our body. It's also being able to notice our actual energy levels, like are we tired, are we energized today? It's all of these other feelings that are happening and communicating in our body. Intuition is another one. If you feel like you're a very intuitive person, it's because you're pretty good at like tuning into your body and seeing like that gut feeling check. So there's many different ways you can tune into your body, but it's really having this relationship in this communication. Thinking about your body is almost if it was another person. And it's like if my mind and my body were married, how would that relationship be? Would they be like never talking to each other and probably need to go to couples therapy? Or are they talking frequently? Are they saying, I need this, I don't need this, I like this, I don't like that?
Mm.
And that can really help start to strengthen this bond again, where you start to feel more connected to your body. And that can in tune start to help us notice how these foods are feeling to us, as well as tuning into our hunger and fullness.
Like that, the mind and body. Are they married? They're a happy couple or not a happy couple? Good analogy.
Hmm.
Yeah, really connecting with them. What it's interesting. I had a friend like, and I used to work with like years back, and this is just something I remember. I remember he was like looking to lose weight, and he wasn't like in bad shape or anything like that, but he was like, oh, do you know what? I keep eating all those crisps in my cupboard and stuff like that, but I'm doing really well. And
Hmm.
I'm like, remove the crisps from your cupboard, and then he lost like a load of weight. But it's like it's
Hmm.
quite interesting, the environment sometimes. So yeah, do you feel like from what you've learned, there's an impact from the environment on our eating habits? And if so,
Hmm.
is there anything we can do about it? Because I know it can be quite tough if you're like in a family with food.
Yeah, absolutely. So I see this come up a lot of times with baked goods. If you
Mm.
bake some brownies and you have them on the counter, you're probably eating a lot more brownies than normal, right?
Yeah.
Because every time you walk past your kitchen, you're like, oh, there's brownies. Do I want a brownie?
Mm.
Okay, maybe not right now. Okay, and then walk past again. Oh, do I want a brownie? So you're having to think about it so much more. We are visual creatures. So if you want to have these foods in the house, I recommend you don't have to like hide them away and lock them in a deep, deep dark cabinet, but don't put them the first thing you open the cabinet, you're like shown the chips or the Oreos or whatever it is. Make them so they're a little bit in the background. You might have heard like when we're wanting to eat healthier, you want to make sure you can see your foods. Like don't put your spinach in the deep dark crisper drawer where you're never going to see it and then it goes rotten and you forgot you even had spinach. Like you're going to want to wash it, or have your strawberries ready to go pre-prepped so you can see them and they're easy to have. So you want to make the foods that you want to eat just as easy to have as the foods that you don't want to eat so often. Because that's often the times that we're like, oh, I'm
Mm.
hungry, let me just grab this really quickly. And so there's like an ease to it and a convenience. But if we prep a little bit ahead of time, we can make other foods just as convenient. So there is that factor of the visual part. So something I touched on earlier briefly was with the phones, the scrolling, the distractions at the desk. And if we think about it, most of the times we're eating processed foods, not because we need nutrition from them, but because we want pleasure. But we're not actually able to get pleasure from those foods if we're eating mindlessly. So this is what happens. People will start eating, 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 and then they'll get halfway through the chip bag, or more realistically, probably to the bottom. They realize, oh my gosh, I didn't even remember tasting those. And so then what do? They go back into the cabinet for even more food and trying to get more pleasure. And so it just continues in this cycle of we're wanting the pleasure, but we don't actually get to experience it because we're so mindless. And that can also be a factor that contributes to overeating on them.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, just I can remember so many times where I've just like been tempted by things as well, like all over the place. So no, loving that kind of guidance. So Amber, just before we sort of like wrap things up today, I just wanted to ask you where the listener can find you if they want to find out more about your work and connect with you, because I know you're offering a lot specifically out there. And is there maybe a
Mhm.
final point you'd like to round us off with today, whether it's something we've talked about or something you just want to add to the conversation?
Hmm. Yeah, so the first place I'd recommend you find me is if you are struggling with this, is to download my guided audio to stop a binge. This is an audio that I created. Like, we were talking about those in the moment urges and how they're so hard to get through, and we need to calm our nervous system. So I made this audio to kind of gently walk you through how to go through some of these tools and techniques and how to make sure you don't binge. But a final note is I would just say, just remember that if you're struggling with binge eating, you're not really doing anything wrong. Like, yes, you're eating more food that you want to, but I want to help people take the shame away from it and know that one, like, so many more people are struggling with this than you might imagine, but also we tend to get wrapped up in all of these thoughts of, oh my gosh, I'm like this horrible person. I can't believe I'm eating all this food. And it's like, at the end of the day, you're just eating food. Those thoughts like led me to a lot of secret eating, which we didn't touch on a ton today, but that was another big part of my journey was just like, I hid so much of this and I was just so ashamed of it. I didn't want anyone to see that I could possibly be anything other than this like healthy, perfect person. And so I hid some of that, so much of that, and that prevented me from changing. So you really need to acknowledge and remove the shame from it in order to change, in order to move forward, and really just giving yourself that compassion that, like, it's just eating food. You're not a bad person. No one's killing any puppies here. Like, we can let go of that guilt and shame around it so we can actually start to look at what we're doing and change from it.
Love it. No, yeah, the compassion's always a key piece. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for coming on today, Amber. Appreciate it and everything you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So that concludes our episode for today. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.